Hello, and welcome to the Georgia Department of Transportation Local Government Contract Management Information System module for the GDOT project managers. What is CMIS? CMIS is a web-based software that allows GDOT to track and monitor contract-specific information. A few things that you are able to do within CMIS is generate contract IDs, track allocated amounts for contracts, consultant evaluations, and electronic invoicing. CMIS electronic invoicing. A few goals the department would like to achieve while using CMIS is to eliminate the amount of paperwork that we currently have with our invoicing process. We would like to speed up the payment process to the local sponsors. We would also like to decrease the amount of time it takes for GDOT to review the invoices for a quicker payout. We would like to provide system-based calculations, capture detailed invoicing information, eliminate date errors, and track invoice payments. Before CMIS, the local sponsors did not know how to tell where their invoice or how close their invoice was to being paid out. With using CMIS, now the local sponsors can log directly into their CMIS external account and see whose queue their invoice is in, and if they need to follow up with a specific person or the GDOT PM, they may do so. When will you use CMIS? Where PFA funds are reimbursable. A PFA, otherwise known as a Project Framework Agreement, is a contract between a department and a local sponsor. This contract solidifies the amount that the department has agreed to reimburse the local sponsor. It is always the department's responsibility to set up a purchase order for payment to a local government where funds are reimbursable. How to request a contract ID. First, the GDOT PM should ensure a 1625 request was submitted on behalf of the project. The 1625 authorizes the funds that were allocated to a specific project. Once the 1625 request is submitted, the GDOT PM should send an email to the OPD request inbox requesting a contract ID for their PFA contract. Within the body of the email, the PM should include the PI number, the reimbursable amount, the federal or the state share, or both amounts, the funding fiscal year, the sponsor, and the type of work. Once the project manager submits the request for a contract number to the OPD inbox, the OPD inbox will supply a contract number for the project manager to navigate to CATS, select actions, and select a new routing request. Once you have selected a new routing request, please search for your contract ID number that was provided to you from the OPD request email. You may search for your contract ID and select your contract ID once it's populated in the field. Once you have selected your contract ID number, select Project Framework Agreement as your contract type. Input the remaining information and submit your contract as normal. If you do not have experience with submitting CATS contracts, there is a training provided on the AMS or the LMS website. Contract execution workflow. When your contract gets uploaded into CATS and is ready for review, it will follow the current review process. It will first go to the office head, next the chief engineer, the legal office, the treasurer office, the commissioner, the treasurer's office, the legal office, the budget office, and finalized by the accounting office. When the accounting office approves your contract, you will receive an email stating that your contract is executed, and this date will be recorded into CMIS. After you have begun billing onto your contract and you find yourself needing additional funds, you may send an email to the OPD request inbox requesting a supplemental agreement to be added to your contract. Within the body of the email, please provide the original contract ID number, the supplemental amount, the supplemental number, and the reason for the supplemental. If you do not do this step prior to submitting your contract into CATS, you will not see the supplemental agreement number populate in CATS when you are getting ready to route your contract. Once you have received a confirmation from the OPD inbox stating that your supplemental agreement is ready for routing, you may navigate to CATS, select New Actions, and select New Routing Request. After you have selected New Routing Request, you may select Electronic Routing. You may search for your contract number and select your contract. Contract type project framework agreement will automatically populate, as well as your supplemental agreement number and your amount in which you provided the OPD request email. If you do not see any of this information automatically populating, please reach out to the OPD email request inbox and they will be able to attach the supplemental agreement number to your reference contract. Once your project is ready for billing, the local sponsor will submit an invoice in CMIS towards your contract ID number. Once the invoice is submitted, every PM will receive an email letting them know that they have an invoice in their queue ready for review. You may access My Queue by going to the GDOT homepage and selecting My Queue. Your My Queue homepage should look similar to the screenshot displayed. On the GDOT My Queue, you are able to approve and reject invoices after you have reviewed them. You may see the invoice number, the contract ID number, the invoicing period, the amount that is being submitted, and who submitted the invoice. After you have selected the invoice in which you would like to review, your screen should look similar to the one shown. By selecting the Contract Info tab, you are able to see a summary of your contract information. You will see your contract ID number, your current contract amount, your current invoiced amount. This is the amount that has been billed to the contract, including the invoice submitted. And you'll also be able to see the contract remaining amount. The sponsor will input all remaining information before submitting the invoice to the project manager. The sponsor will input the from date, the end date, and select if this is the final invoice or not. If the final invoice is selected, this indicates that this is the final billing for this contract ID and that the purchase order may be closed. The sponsor will also create a unique invoice number. The project activity number and the project manager's name will automatically populate from the information given when the contract was first created. The work completed to date is a number or percentage given by the sponsor. This amount indicates how far along the project has gotten before it reaches 100%. The budget expended to date percentage is automatically calculated by CMIS. it takes the contract invoice amount and divides it by the current contract amount, leaving you with the budget expended to date percentage. The sponsors are also responsible for adding attachments to each invoice. The sponsor should include the local let reimbursement form and all supporting documentation, which includes checks or proof of payments to support the amount that they are asking to be reimbursed. The sponsor will also acknowledge and accept the terms of service. The sponsors are required to attach supporting documentation to every invoice that is submitted within CMIS. One of the documents required for invoice submission is the local PE reimbursement request form. This form should be filled out by the sponsors for every invoice and submitted and attached to the invoice within CMIS. The GDOT project manager should ensure that all the amounts that are listed on the reimbursement request are exactly the same as the amounts requested on the CMIS invoice. The sponsors are also required to attach any copies of checks and proof of payments to reflect the amount that they are asking to be reimbursed. If the locals have an 80-20 split, then the locals should be requesting 80% of whatever amount that they have totally paid out. The checks and the proof of payments should support this amount. Once a PM has reviewed and approved an invoice, the invoice will follow the provided workflow. It will go from the GDOT project manager to the OPD contract technician to the office administrator to contracts payable to cash disbursements, and then it will reach the CMIS invoicing end. It should take between 10 to 15 days for an invoice to be paid after it has reached the CMIS invoicing end. To review your contract information at a later date, you can navigate to the GDOT homepage and select Applications and select Contract Management Information System Internal. After you have selected CMIS Internal from the Applications page, your home page for CMIS should look similar to the one displayed. On this page, you are able to search your contract ID number, once you type in your contract ID number and select your contract, you are able to look at your contract summary information. Your screen should look similar to the page below. You'll be able to see your contract ID number, your contract amount, your start date, the date the contract was executed, the project manager, and the contract status. You will also be able to see who the prime vendor and sub-vendors are on this particular contract. If you would like to view your invoices for a particular contract at a later time, you may select the Electronic Invoicing tab on your CMIS Internal homepage as shown in the previous slide. On this tab, you are able to search for your contract ID number and review any invoices that were submitted under a particular contract. Once you have selected the invoice in which you would like to review, you may select the Contract Info tab, and it will show a summary of the current information per contract. Are there any questions?